Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Marvel's Spider-Man Spectacular Difficulty video walkthrough. Had a bit of a brain fart then on what the difficulty was called. This is my no damage run of the campaign. We're currently traversing across the city as the eponymous Spider-Man, using all the moves and the abilities that I can to speed him up, even though I haven't purchased any of them yet. And the mission structure as I share these videos, guys, is going to be very similar. You're going to see me travel to the destination, you're going to see the mission, and then you're going to see the mission's end. And I've done this so that it gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit at the beginning. Some of these missions are really short, a lot of the gameplay flies by, so if I've got a little bit of a buffer at the beginning, it enables me to get out all the stuff I need to tell you, so hopefully that I can help you and get through the things that you might be struggling with. One thing you might be wondering is, Chris, why am I not struggling? And it's something that needs to be addressed in a walkthrough, I believe. This game is not as challenging as it first appears. When you first get into a tough area and you get beat up by something, an hour later you're not going to get beaten up by the same thing, and then once you start getting suit upgrades and abilities and gadgets, you're going to notice that if you use the tools that the game affords you, the game can be exceptionally simple. And the reason I'm making a walkthrough is because I think the game is great, and I wanted to do something interesting with it, and just kind of show it and support it on the channel. It's not necessarily that I believe that it needs one, and not necessarily that I believe that you need one either. The difficulty that they'll be releasing soon, the ultimate difficulty, I'm very excited for, because I'm curious to see what they do with it. But before we talk too much about that, we're going to be coming down here and being introduced to the concept of the random crimes that seem to happen. Not only will we have a random crime here, but we will also have a man with a weapon, and the game is very rigid on what it wants you to do in these little tutorial moments. So just then, all I wanted to do with that guy was to pound him into the ground, but the game wanted me to start doing the air combo. And obviously, if you've been watching the previous part, I've been doing the air combos quite a lot, so I'm understanding of what it needs to be done when you want to juggle people, but I just wanted to get rid of them. If you're looking for complete efficiency, guys, there are a few moves that are objectively seemingly the best moves in the game. Anything that involves a finisher turns it into a really powerful move like what I did just then. And I think the most powerful move that Spider-Man has, as I touched on in the last video, is the one where you hit them with square from behind, where he does the double kick. Every time you do that, it seems to do big chunks on people. And the input for it is only square, circle, square. It's a very simple input. It reminds me very much of the Tetsuzankos from Bayonetta or something. It's such a oomping technique. And it's definitely the one you want to go to if you want to get rid of people quickly. And speaking of getting rid of people quickly, here is a brute. This enemy type is probably the most interesting enemy type in the game, because he feels broken to me. He feels like there's a little problem with his programming, and I'm not entirely certain why he works the way he does. But the way you want to deal with him is, if you web him up, you can slow him down and then beat him up. The best thing to hit him with when you've slowed him down is either thrown objects, as I'm doing right now, or to just square, circle, square on his back, and you'll do a lot of damage then. If you go down the upgrade tree, and you're able your Spider-Man to web him up and then spin him and chuck him, the easiest way to get rid of those particular enemies is to web them and then throw them into a wall. But the single easiest way to get rid of him is to use either the impact web or the web grenade and do it next to a wall. If you hit him with those gadgets, you'll spray him against the wall, you'll finish him immediately, and you'll never have to fight him. And it makes them a complete joke, because if you want to hit them with a finisher, with a takedown, you have to do so with 2 bars of focus. This game features a level requirement on the difficulty of enemy to do a takedown on them, and it's a pretty interesting idea that I think fundamentally fails, and I'm going to talk about that later on when we don't have as much to discuss as we do. But if you're getting hurt by the brutes and you're dying to them and they're confusing you and it doesn't seem like you know how to fight them, don't worry whatsoever. They're one of those enemies where the moment you realise that his attacks are super sped up and that he's very difficult to stun. For instance, if you press triangle on him to close the distance, he will counter you, much like the Kingpin did, because he has the Kingpin's moveset effectively. He is a Kingpin for all intents and purposes, and I can understand the Kingpin having extraordinary powers, but when those guys do, it feels kind of crazy. And I'm not against having challenging enemies. I want challenging enemies, but all I want is I want the game to be consistent, and that particular enemy is not consistent at all. Once again, I'll talk more about him when he turns up later on. But this mission is essentially keeping us up to date with what Spider-Man does on this planet of his. This mission is keeping the peace, literally. We're going to be going around and doing some of the side content and activities. The items that I'm going to be working towards for my suit gadgets and for the suits in general are going to be, I like abilities that increase my damage. Anything that increases damage I'm going to go for. So perfect dodge, increased damage, I'll probably grab that. Full life, increased damage, I'll probably grab that. Slow motion when you perfectly dodge is something I quite like to use. You get gadgets on finishers, I really like that ability, and 2 times focus when you web people is really, really useful too. Those are the ones that I gravitate towards. As far as suit goes, I'm going to get the Noir suit because it's one of my favourite suits in the game, and then I'm going to replace it with the, I think it's called the Mark II suit. It's the inverted Game of Death suit, and is it the Game of Life suit then? I'm not too sure, but it's the one that's black with the yellow parts on it, and I really, really like that suit. So those are the ones I'm going to be wearing in the game. And then as far as suit abilities, I'm going to pretty much recommend that you get the Web Blossom technique, which is on one of the standard Spider-Man suits, because it's the most overpowered thing in the game. It can end a fight before it's even begun, just use that. And the even stranger part of those abilities is that unlike the focus, which has to be generated by doing well in the game, they regenerate over time. And I find that to be kind of strange, because the takedowns, for all intents and purposes, aren't very good. They can get rid of one guy, but I can launch him, pound him into the ground, and web him in the same amount of time. And admittedly, you get iframes, but I feel like the abilities when you click both your analogs in far exceed the want for the takedowns. So it seems very strange that they regenerate. But once again, this game is filled with really interesting design, and I'm going to be discussing it at length in these videos. So if you're interested in the philosophy of games and what makes something interesting, what makes something accessible, what makes something but good and bad, and things of that nature, then hopefully you will enjoy the rest of the discussions that we have throughout this walkthrough. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.